In this video, I'm going to tell you how to rediscover the person underneath all the people pleasing and how to finally get to know your essence again, even if you've maybe forgotten it for a very long time. So basically, you can think of this as a sort of a pile of rubble. And somewhere in that pile, buried deep down there, is you. And you've simply forgotten who you are, but you're still there somewhere. What you have to do is you have to go through that pile of rubble carefully. So if you look at this pile, basically it is built on one value that kind of overshadows everything. And that is the feeling that you need to feel accepted and that you need to feel like you belong. This is what all the people pleasing and all the adjusting to other people's wants and needs is based on. And this is why you are maybe stuck in this puddle and are unable to find yourself. Your goal should be to find yourself at the bottom of the pile and to realize and truly believe that your needs and limits are just as valid as everybody else's. So this is the value that you should go to. So from believing that belonging and feeling accepted and avoiding conflict is the most important value of all, you should go to the value that your limits and boundaries deserve to be there. And it's very difficult to go from this one belief to the other one, especially if you've learned this belief over years and years of conditioning. So, a lot of people tell you to start by changing your beliefs, but I don't really believe in that. It's much more efficient to start by changing your behavior. Essentially, belief and behavior, they are sort of in a causal relationship that goes in both directions. So basically, belief influences behavior or action, which in turn fuels belief. So you can intervene in any step of the process, basically. So you can either start by changing your beliefs or start by changing your behaviors. Either way, both will change. So what I suggest you do is to start by changing your behavior. You need to behave like a person who holds the belief that you hope to find at the bottom of that pile, which is my goals, my boundaries, my values are just as valid as everybody else's. And this is more important than being liked and feeling like you belong. So, how do I behave like such a person? We are creatures of habit. And if you've acted like someone who really puts other people's needs above their own for years, it's going to be very difficult to unlearn that. So, here's where I tell you to make a mindset shift. You have to use your empathy against itself. So, you're very agreeable, probably. If you're a people pleaser, you probably carry the personality trait of agreeability, or you've learned as some kind of trauma response that you need to fawn and need to adjust to everybody else. What this teaches you is it teaches you how to read people's wishes from their eyes, basically. So you're very good, probably, at being very empathetic and realizing what people want, inferring what they need, just not when it comes to yourself. So here comes the trick. You might not believe that you are worthy and deserve to make your opinion heard, but you certainly believe that others deserve to do that. So you can infer one's needs and wishes, just not when it comes to yourself. And I need you to make the mindset shift to ask yourself, what would somebody else do in this situation? There's this kind of question going around on social media right now, which is pretty similar. It's what would the people reading your life story right now would be screaming at you right now to do? So you basically need to make that shift. You need to view yourself through the lens of another person's eyes. So you have to essentially treat yourself like you're someone responsible for helping. This is one of the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. I think it really applies here. You have to take your own pain seriously and recognize your own value and make choices that serve your long-term well-being instead of just trying to create short-term comfort for others, because this is what people pleasers a lot of the times do. They put other people's short-term enjoyment over their lifelong enjoyment, which is just not right. So, second of all, you need to find out what is the truth. You need to find your essence. But the problem with people pleasers is a lot of the times they start to believe that pleasing others makes them genuinely happy. And this can also be true to some degree. If you're a really agreeable person, that's just a character trait of yours, and it actually makes you happy to serve other people to some degree. The problem is when it becomes pathological and you really try to always fulfill others' needs before your own, and you don't just do it in order to create comfort for others, but to prevent conflict from happening, to prevent being disliked. Here's where it becomes really problematic. And how you find out what you really want, again, even if you like serving others, is you have to ask yourself, if no one else was watching right now, which outcome would I prefer? If no one was around to please, what would I do? And here's, I think, the essence of the problem. If you've been people pleasing for a very long time, you don't have an answer to this question. Instead, you feel kind of lost when there's no one to please. You might feel like there's nothing, like there's no essence to you. But trust me, it is there, even if it's very fragmented and very quiet. Somewhere in that pile is you, buried under years of people pleasing, but it is there waiting for you to rescue it. And here are some signs that it's still there. For example, if you find yourself sometimes making sarcastic remarks or starting to hold resentment against people because they start disrespecting you because you always say yes to everything, this is yourself trying to come through and say, hey, this is not okay. Like, I didn't really want this, and I don't really want to be treated this way. And this itching in your chest when someone is treating you with disrespect, despite you knowing that you are competent and just are being treated this way because you're very agreeable, this shows you that you're still there. And the problem, I think the essence of this whole problem is that you kind of lose yourself through people pleasing after a while. So basically, yourself is made up of 4 parts. It consists of your identity, so who am I? Your sense of agency, which is what do I choose to do? Your boundaries, where do I end and where do others begin? And also your worth, so what gives me value? And with a lot of people pleasers and just agreeable people in general, every one of these areas that make up the self are connected to other people. So you would answer the question, who am I, with, I'm an empathetic person. I'm a social person. What do I choose? The agency question, you would answer with, I choose what is best for others. I choose what makes other people happy a lot of the times. I try to create the best outcomes for everyone. Where do I end and where do others begin? This often is just merged. You can't tell because you literally live through others. And what gives me value? I guess you can figure how you would answer that question. If I make others happy, if I get approval from others, if I get external validation for being such a nice person. Here's the problem. Yourself. All the 4 questions that make up yourself are somehow answered with some kind of remark to others. And this is what you have to change. But how do you rebuild that? Basically, the problem is that your inner narrative is probably gone. So what you have to do is you have to become the narrator of your own life again and take authorship of your own life again. And this can be very difficult. You have to rebuild yourself, which is not very easy. What you have to do in order to do this is you have to shift from being a subject to being object. So instead of being a side character in somebody else's story, you have to become a main character in your own story. So you have to notice your behaviors instead of being them, okay? So I really want you to, the next time you're in a situation where you are people pleasing, you have to observe yourself. You have to step out of the subject mode and look at yourself and be like, okay, interesting. I said yes to this, even though I didn't really want it. Interesting. Important here is that you don't really judge, you have to observe. So it's kind of like a narrator being like, okay, this person is doing this thing. Interesting. And if you notice your behaviors instead of being them, this is what kind of creates a distance for you. And this will help you create your own belief system, which is the second step. You have to ask yourself, why does this character that I'm looking at act this way? Why would they say yes to something that they actually don't want to do? Why would they make themselves so small? Who taught this character this? Who taught me that I have to please to be safe? Who told me that I should always avoid being disliked? Who created this big fear inside of me? And is this really real? Because truth is, it's probably not. It's much more scary to lose yourself than to be disliked. And when you realize these internal values that you have that make you act this way, you have to start creating your own meaning system. And this is hard work. So basically, you have to name these values that you base all your behavior on, and by naming them, they sort of lose the power that they have over you. When they become objects of reflection, they can't be drivers of your identity anymore, okay? So if you really write out these values, maybe even, or like formulate them in your head, you start to realize that they're nothing but internalized sentences that were probably brought to you by society, by other people, and they are not what defines you. They are not part of yourself. So, and then you have to start creating your own belief system, which is one where you decide what matters and not your old coping strategies. And this is the part where you change your beliefs. So remember at the beginning, I said that it's very difficult to start by changing your beliefs, and you should rather start by changing your actions. This is now where we get to the belief part. So you have to develop internal truths that you can live by, that you can live out and act out in the world. And once you have named those old beliefs and replaced them with more authentic ones that resonate with yourself, you have to really start acting them out. And this will be difficult because you've been conditioned. You've learned to act out these old values that you've now come to realize. And now you have to start behaving based on this new set of values. So maybe one value that you have is, I say what I think when I think it's right. And then you actually have to do it. And this is the difficult part, I think, to be in a situation where you risk being rejected by other people and still saying what you really think. You have to hold boundaries without apologizing. And you have to make decisions based on your truth, based on these internal truths that you've identified, and not on managing others' emotions. You should aim at bringing your full self to conversations and not just chasing others' approval. So this is a difficult process to build up yourself, especially when you've lost it, but it is certainly worth it. And after a while, when you start looking at yourself as an object and identifying your own values, your own goals, and acting them out, you will get that sense of agency, get that sense of self, and get that sense of worth back that you've lost because you've tied it all to other people. So I hope you guys could take something from this video, and I see you guys in the next video.